Hi guys, welcome to my channel. My name is Michelle Moreus and I make art tutorials that are fun, easy, and accessible for everyone. Today we're going to be doing blending colored pencils. I'm going to show you 5 ways to easily blend your colored pencils for beginners. The first method is layering. This method takes the most time and the most patience. You need to start with very light layers. You don't want to press too hard on the pencil. Always start with a very sharp colored pencil and keep light pressure. If you're having trouble keeping your pressure control, hold the pencil back farther on the barrel, and this will prevent you from putting too much pressure down and ruining the tooth of the paper. So with the layering technique, it takes the most time. You have to be very patient and go over and over with very light layers, and you want to overlap each area that you're trying to blend. So I put down the lightest tone first, and then I went in with my mid-tone. Now I'm going in with my darker tone, and each layer gets overlapped a little bit with the layer previous. And you're just going to keep this up. There might be 15 layers on this little circle. This little circle actually took me 11 minutes just to color this little circle with the layering technique. So we're just going in with different colors. You can use this for skin tones. You're not ruining the tooth of the paper. You can still go over top with all of your details because you've gone in with such light layers. And you want to vary your strokes so that you cover up the graininess of the paper. So if you're going in and doing this correctly, you're going in light enough that you can keep layering, and like I said, you could put 15 layers down, and you can still go in with your details because you are going so light-handed with this. You are not ruining the tooth of the paper, but you are covering up all the little white parts of the paper. So you can vary your strokes. You can go horizontal, vertical, you can go in little circles, and you'll see that it does an effective job of covering the white of the paper. The second method I want to talk about is burnishing. Burnishing is a lot like layering. You still have to layer the pencils, and I still go in with a light pressure to start with. Now you want to burnish at the end stage of your drawing. The reason for this is you're going to gradually increase the pressure on your pencil the more layers that you put down. So with every layer you're going to increase the pressure just a little bit. But what you're going to do is you're going to flatten the tooth of the paper, and you won't be able to put any more details on top of what you've just put down after you burnish. So there are a couple ways to burnish. We're still layering at this point, but we are increasing the pressure. And I usually take a lighter color or my lightest tone, and I will burnish with that color, and that mushes all of the other colors together. So I'm still going in, increasing the pressure in my dark areas, and then I'm going to go in with my light tone. So you'll see I'm going to grab my lightest color pencil, and I'm going to just start going in and going over and mushing all of those colors together. So you can change the direction of your stroke. You can use little circles, whatever works for you, but I'm going over the whole thing, and that is now just mushing all of that together. But like I said, you will have a hard time putting details on top of what you've now burnished because you've ruined the tooth of the paper. There will be no tooth to grab any more details. So save this step for the very last phase. So our third method is using solvent, or OMS, odorless mineral spirits. I really like this method, but it does create a little bit of a more painterly finish, which you'll see in a minute. So I'm going in with my light layers. You don't have to be quite as neat as the layering technique, because the solvent is going to actually dissolve the colors together to get a nice smooth effect and smooth transition. So like before, I am overlapping my colors one on top of each other. And you want to be careful with this method. You want to make sure that you have enough product down on the paper before you go in with the solvent. And this is very important. If you don't have enough pigment on the paper before you go in with the solvent, what's going to happen is you're going to get an oily stain on the paper. And this is not good. There's not going to be enough color down for it to react with and actually blend. So you want to have enough product down. So now I like to put my solvent in a smaller container. It comes in kind of a big jar. I like to put it in a small jar with a lid, and I use just for the project that I'm doing, because it will get muddied up and you don't want to go in to a fresh drawing with colors from something else and muddy up your work. So you can see how this is just melting the colors together. It is making it more painterly, but it does a really fantastic job of mushing all those colors together. Now, one thing about solvent is, because we use such light layers before we put it down, you can go over and over and over this. So we're going to let this dry, and we're going to come back to it, and we're going to add more layers. Our fourth method is colorless blender pencils. Each color pencil that you can purchase, whether you're using polychromos or prismacolor or blick or whatever color pencils you're using, each one is pigment mixed with a binder. And so the colorless blender that goes with your color pencil is going to be just the binder material that they use in the pencil itself. So if you're using Prismacolors, Prismacolor has a wax binder. So your blender pencil is just going to be a clear wax that is made up in the pencil in the Prismacolor. If you're using Polychromos, Polychromos is an oil-based color pencil, and your colorless blender will be an oil-based colorless blender, which is the binder that the oil pencils are made of, and vice versa. If you have any other brand, it works the same way, and I believe they all have a colorless blender. But I mean, you can mix colorless blenders if you use wax with wax and oil with oil. So we're going in and we're doing the same thing. We're overlapping our layers, and now we're going in with our colorless blender. Now with this method, I really like to use circles, because a lot like the burnishing technique, you're going to save this for last, because it will ruin the tooth of the paper. You're going in with a little bit of pressure, and what you can see here is it does make the color a lot more vibrant, but it does a really fantastic job of blending those colors together. But like I said, you're going to need to wait until the end to use this method, because you won't be able to put details on top. Our fifth method is using a colorless alcohol marker. So you find these a lot in your Copic marker sets, and it's just the alcohol base that the marker is made out of, but it's clear. It's just a clear liquid in a pen kind of situation, and this is going to make your color pencils work more like a Copic marker does. So I'm just going in, I'm going to layer some colors in just to show you, and then we're going to go in with this marker and see what kind of effects we can get with it. But I will warn you, If you're just doing like a background or some areas, this can be effective. I don't prefer this method. I used to use this when I first started out, and it worked okay for certain areas, but it's not as precise, and it does leave kind of a streaky effect, like with the markers, the alcohol markers. So I would just, be sparingly with this, and you'll see as we start to go in with the marker what happens. Now the marker is going to get muddied up from putting this down, so you want to have like a scrap piece of paper on the side of you that you can rub the marker on until it gets colorless, and then go back into your drawing. So you'll see you're going to get those streaks like you do with the alcohol markers. You can work at it and get those to go away. It takes a little bit of patience and time, but you can still see the streaks. It looks like a marker now. So I go into the lighter area and then I work my way in, and you can see it kind of drags some of the color through. It does blend pretty good, but it just leaves a little bit of streakiness in there. If you were doing a background, it wouldn't really matter, especially a bokeh background, like a blurry background. But if you want to be more precise, there are better methods to blend with. So this last circle, I'm going to show you exactly what not to do. I know when you're starting out with colored pencils, you think that you're just going to grab the tone that you want to put down, and you start to put it in, and you're putting a lot of pressure down, and you're getting that color down, but you're not going to get a realistic effect without layering. You need those layers to create depth and to create a nice realistic effect. This way you're just haphazardly putting down the color, you're ruining the tooth of the paper right from the beginning, and you will never be able to put any more details on top. So don't do what this last circle is about. It's the worst way to try to do colored pencils. Light layers with very sharp pencils is really the way to go with this. And it takes time. Colored pencil is a very slow medium that needs to be built up gradually. So now that our little circle with the solvent has dried, I'm going to go back in with another really light layer of colored pencil. Now you can see how vibrant the color looks on top of that solvent. Your paper and the feel of your pencils on the paper after using the solvent will be different than before. The color pencil glides right over where you've used the solvent, and the color just really is kind of magnified. Now, I'm not putting any pressure on this pencil. I'm just still going in with really, really light layers. And you can go back and put more solvent after this and still be able to go on top of it with your details. I'm just trying to show you how nice and vibrant and how smooth those pencils glide on top when you've used that solvent. Now, one thing to remember with solvent, you want to use it in a well-ventilated area. You want to keep the cap on your solvent and, not breathe in those fumes. So just well-ventilated area, and my little trick with using a small little container, just keep it capped when you're not using it. Now, if you're going to put more solvent onto this piece, you want to always let it dry in between layers, but you'll be able to put a ton of layers on top as long as you let it dry in between each layer. So I want to thank you guys so much for joining me today. I hope you learned a little bit about blending color pencils. I hope I made it easy for you to understand. And please leave me a comment below and let me know if you've tried any of these techniques or you have any other techniques that you've used that work well for you. Thanks so much for joining me today, and happy art.